Starve for justice. How jails use food as punishment in America. For more real crime stories, be sure to subscribe, like, share, and let's discuss your thoughts in the comments. The first sign of horror came at dawn in a cold county jail somewhere in Arizona, when the guards walked into a unit of the Joe Arpaio Run facility and found men quietly staring at their trays, many refusing to touch them. A tray of food might normally seem mundane, but this one told a story of calculated cruelty. One inmate described being served a block of something called notorious, a bland, mush-like meal, baked in a pan, lacking utensils, and offered as a disciplinary token rather than a real dinner. Wikipedia. As investigators later revealed the ledger of the jail's food budget, they saw the sheriff's office had paid for full meals, but the plates that reached the men were bare. Half loaves, stale bread, broken meal cycles. One former detainee testified to bread so brittle he could break it with his fingers, and meat so gray it resembled unlabeled dog food. Filter. What came next shook the justice system. Federal court filings showed that officials had withheld food as punishment for years, treating meals as leverage. In one ruling, the Ninth Circuit found that the jail had served moldy bread, rotten fruit, and allowed the heat to climb unsafely, while earning profit from sketchy food contracts. Wikipedia. Walk down the corridor, the locked cells, the trays arriving at noon, the men watching the guards leave. Some refused the trays. Many accepted them, but the portions were tiny, the calories low, the frequency irregular. What could once have been nourishment had become a system of control. An attorney for the incarcerated filed motion after motion, alleging that this was not just poor housekeeping but a deliberate policy. Food used as punishment, as expression of power. Courts have long said withholding meals can violate the Eighth Amendment's prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. Prison legal news. In the hearing room, the chief jail administrator squirmed under questioning. How many meals per day? How many calories? What did the contract say? He hovered over his report, avoided the phrase meal loaf. Outside, families shook their heads in disbelief. Their loved ones locked inside, told to eat this or nothing, forced to buy commissary items or go hungry. But the most explosive moment arrived when an internal memo surfaced, dated a few years back, instructing that any prisoner placed in special management status, read, misbehavior, should be served lockout tray equals minimal nutritional value. The documentation made clear, food wasn't incidental. It was discipline. And then the cliffhanger. Just as the trial was about to begin, prosecutors discovered a cache of hidden receipts showing the food service company underreported meals served, while the jail claimed full headcount. The whistleblower who provided the documents vanished overnight. No trace. The case hung, suspended in limbo. Who silenced the witness? What else lay buried in those hidden bills? Before the scandal broke, the Maricopa County Jail under Sheriff Joe Arpaio was known nationwide for its tough-on-crime image. Cameras often captured inmates wearing pink underwear and sleeping in open-air, tent city, yards under the blistering Arizona sun. Arpaio called it justice. He told reporters, "It's not supposed to be fun in jail." But behind the spectacle, something darker simmered, a quiet hunger spreading through the cells. Many of those who entered the jail were pretrial detainees, not yet convicted of a crime, still legally innocent. Among them was Scott Norberg, a 35-year-old musician arrested on a nonviolent charge in 1996. He never made it home. During his short stay, Norberg and others complained about food conditions, small portions, strange loaves, and the stench of rot. Some wrote desperate letters to family, saying they felt dizzy, sick, or faint from lack of nutrition. Jail staff brushed them off as discipline cases. The turning point came when Norberg died inside a restraint chair after clashing with guards. His family's lawsuit didn't just expose excessive force, it opened the door to a flood of testimony about starvation and notorious, meals used as punishment. Lawyers uncovered records showing that thousands of inmates were placed on food restriction as a disciplinary measure, sometimes for minor infractions like talking back or leaving a cup unwashed. Medical reports documented weight loss of up to 20 pounds in a month. In one deposition, a former kitchen worker described the food prep area as a trash kitchen, Ingredients past expiration, meat stored in buckets, vegetables green with mold. He said the orders were clear. Keep it cheap. They don't need flavor. Another inmate testified he was fed only 2 meals a day, each less than 1,000 calories. I felt my bones, he said, like my body was eating itself. By 2008, federal monitors visited the facility. What they found was chilling. They photographed trays containing a scoop of beans, half a slice of bread, and murky water-labeled soup. One inspector wrote, "This food would be rejected in any school cafeteria in America." When the findings leaked, the sheriff's office pushed back, insisting the food met minimum standards. But the story refused to die. Civil rights lawyers compared records and discovered the food vendor, Aramark Correctional Services, had been fined in other states for serving spoiled food and cutting corners. Behind the scenes, the same contracts tied the jail's savings to how little food they served. The less they fed, the more money the department kept. As the evidence piled up, one whistleblower, a food services accountant, came forward to testify. But the night before her scheduled deposition, her car was found abandoned outside Phoenix. Her laptop, containing emails and receipts that could expose years of cover-ups, was gone. Investigators called it a coincidence. The defense called it irrelevant. And the families of the inmates? They called it what it was, a system built on starvation. But what they didn't know was that the whistleblower had already sent a backup of her evidence to a journalist at the Phoenix New-Times. When that journalist opened the files, what they saw would send shockwaves across the nation. The email files the journalist received were explosive. Hundreds of internal messages between jail administrators, county officials, and the food contractor laid bare a system that turned human hunger into profit. One line stood out in bold text: less consumption equals greater efficiency. The spreadsheet attached detailed a chilling formula: how each calorie cut, each skipped tray, meant more leftover funds for the department's operational bonuses. When the Phoenix New-Times broke the story, it hit Arizona like a thunderclap. Headlines screamed, "Food as punishment" and "Sheriff's jail under federal investigation." Former inmates began speaking publicly. Some appeared frail, still haunted by the experience. One man said, "You stop thinking like a person after a while. You think like an animal waiting for scraps." Soon, the Department of Justice launched a civil rights investigation. Inspectors re-entered the jail unannounced, cameras rolling. The footage, later obtained by reporters, showed trays stacked with dry Nutriloaf, food portions the size of a child's fist, and mold creeping along the kitchen walls. The air reeked of ammonia and decay. One inspector whispered, "This isn't just unsanitary. It's inhumane." In court, the defense tried to argue that the meals were nutritionally adequate. But when the judge ordered an independent lab test, the results crushed that argument. Each meal averaged only 1,300 calories a day, far below federal standards. The report concluded, sustained feeding at this level constitutes starvation-level nutrition. The courtroom grew silent as victims' families listened. Mothers who had buried sons, wives who had begged for help. Then came the testimony of a former jail nurse. Her words cut through the silence. "We kept records of weight loss, but they told us not to report it. They said, it's discipline, not abuse." Under mounting pressure, the county reached a settlement. Millions of dollars paid out to victims' families and civil rights groups. Sheriff Arpaio's tent city was eventually shut down. But no amount of money could undo the damage. Inside the community, people still whispered about those who had vanished or fallen sick behind those steel doors. The whistleblower's identity was finally revealed: Elaine Porter, a quiet single mother who had worked in the jail's finance department. Her bravery saved countless lives. In a televised interview, she said, "They thought no one would care if prisoners went hungry. I cared." As the credits rolled on the evening news, images flashed. Inmates staring down at empty trays, families holding faded photos, the deserted kitchen with its rusted ovens. Justice, some said, had finally come. But for those who endured the starvation, the scars never healed. And the final voiceover from the documentary that followed summed it up best. In America's jails, punishment isn't always a cell. Sometimes, it's the hunger that no one sees.